Welcome everyone to today's webinar. Will be a panel discussion. The topic will be preparing for the new normal. With us today we have David Crary, who's the owner of Hindsight Software, John Newland, owner of Quality Sprinkling Systems, and Chris Pine, the president of Irrigation Training. Hopefully you can all see us. We're gonna have everybody muted from the start, but if you have a question, please just raise your hand. It should be over on the toolbar on the right side of your screen, and we'll unmute you and allow you to ask your question. And with that, that's about all the guidance I think I need to give you. Let's get started. I'm just going to throw this out there, guys. Why don't we start about talking about business statistics, the things you guys need, you think everybody should really be keeping an eye on, and what they really need to focus on. I just open that up to you guys and just jump in, whoever wants to kick it off.
Sure, I'll kick it off. Thanks for setting this up, Mike. I appreciate it. And hello, everyone out there. That's an interesting topic to start with, and it's kind of the not so exciting part about this whole thing is that many times we always tend to stress the importance of having awareness of what your numbers are and what that means to drive a business, and now or any time that there is an economic change, it's a downturn or recession, regardless, it's absolutely critical at this point. And many businesses will do well no matter what, just riding out a wave, and you really don't see the casualties and failures develop until you get into a situation like we're in now. And there are kind of one of the key things here that really start to develop really quickly are that there's a whole bunch of different things that are changing in contracting businesses at this point. And one thing that's a big factor is overhead, and just being aware of how much there is and being able to trim that back at this point when overhead is not going to be proportional. You look at the industry as a whole, and there are segments that are growing. There are businesses that are probably going to do really well through this whole crisis, but it's not uncommon and unusual, and it changes a lot geographically, to hear companies that are pretty regularly off 10, 15, 20%. And again, we're looking at a year over year. There's a whole bunch of factors in there, but when you start getting into those numbers, there has to be some adjustment. And talking with some contractors out there, many have revisited budgets two or three times in the past couple of months, making adjustments to try and change based on what we're finding out day to day and the changes that are occurring. So it's critical at this point.
I would add that Chris is 100% right. This is also the time to do two things, in my opinion, is that look at your overhead, look at your customers, and are you making the margin on each customer that you think you should be making? And if you're not, maybe it's a time to fire that customer and really make sure that you are very strategic on the customer's accounts that you're maintaining, and that you're getting the value that you need out of that. And then the second thing, and probably a little bit more important than that, is to watch your accounts receivable. Don't let your accounts receivable get out of control. Cash is going to be king this year, and you got to control cash. And if at all possible, I would encourage you to get out of the accounts receivable business and use the crisis that we're in to start taking a credit card at the time of scheduling, so you get paid right away. And don't wait 30 or 60 days to get paid for that work you did today or tomorrow.
Yeah, this is John Newland. I'm sorry, Mark.
Go ahead, John.
I
was just
agree
going to ask that if you're a contractor to get you to weigh in the things you actually look at, you watch day to day and even long term. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, this past week, we've actually fired two accounts because of looking at just what David Crary said, that what we're making off of those two customers, I could easily make it up and do much better applying our labor somewhere else, because they just the way the nature of their business, big box stores, it doesn't pay. I can understand why people stay away from them.
You know, another metric that is starting to come into play, specific to this climate too, is that there are companies, and maybe a little bit more so on those that are doing more landscape maintenance as opposed to the irrigation maintenance and service, which tends to be a lot more focused, or typically with one technician per vehicle, is that ratio between equipment and labor, because you've got a lot less people in vehicles because of requirements for complying with COVID regulations and that sort of thing, and even just understanding the relationship between the equipment required now to provide services and the labor force, the amount of people that are working, is something that you got to kind of keep an eye on as well too at this point.
Yeah, good points. And now that you bring up labor, kind of leads us into talking about, your team building, which could be your internal team and some external teams. You guys want to talk about that and kind of transition into ways to look at labor and other, not necessarily specifically employees, but other resources that you use that are part of your business team that you use to perform your business, to even promote it. What are your thoughts on
that? I think there's a real opportunity for the irrigation contractor to get very aggressive at this time with some marketing ideas. Look at Lowe's and Home Depot. They're booming right now. People are open to improving their house. That's where they're spending all their time. And I think the demographics of our industry help that. The people that have lost their job are at the low end of the economic scale. It's unfortunate, but they're the restaurant workers or the hotel workers. They're at the lower end. The demographics of the green industry and the irrigation business is that's more in the middle and the higher end income brackets. People that can afford to buy a lawn sprinkler system, have some money, have some assets. They might be open to trying new things and be spending some money on their house and on their, apparently they are, because Home Depot and Lowe's are doing great business. They're open to doing more business this year. They're looking to spend some money on their home. Give them an opportunity to improve their sprinkler system. Give them an opportunity to spend some money with you. Don't be afraid to ask for a sale. And it might not be a big home run sale, but any sale is going to be better than nothing this year. And it brings in incremental revenue. And there's a lot of ways that you can improve your customers' business or customers' homes with irrigation at this time. Every one of us know we can walk onto a job site and see something broken, something that needs to be fixed. Think about that. How can you update them? Update their controller to Wi-Fi. Update their. There's always a valve box that's broken. Landscaping that's going in front of heads. Start looking at that. Sell it.
Yeah, we had a question coming in, sort of following up on your comments there, Dave. It's from someone who's currently commercial only, but should they start considering entering high-end residential? That's. Go ahead.
That's an interesting question, because especially when you look at what the new normal is going to look like for the next year or two. And look, there's already companies that aren't expecting their staff, and like David said, we're not talking about restaurant workers, we're talking about generally white collar professionals that are going to be working from home for the foreseeable future. And if that's the case, it really further supports that commercial real estate is, in that business, that sector is probably not going to look the same as what it did, and that there are going to be more and more people that will either be working from home or will be working in, you take in the north. I was talking with a contractor in the Northeast, and they're pretty involved in, or more involved in the commercial side of it, and they've got their pulse, or taking the pulse of what commercial real estate property owners are doing, and they're thinking, there's going to be a movement to the suburbs. And so I think that a business that is focused in the commercial space has got to take a look at, as well as many other things at this time, whether high-end residential would be an option. I think that in this crisis that business may grow.
I think the move to high-end residential is smart too, because I think the residential customer is more loyal than a commercial contractor, a commercial business. John, do you see that?
Oh yeah, right off the bat, we saw two of our largest clients on the commercial end pull back immediately. I have had none of my residentials do that. In fact, just the opposite.
The other thing I think that's going to happen in the residential market is that a lot of the smaller, weaker contractor isn't going to make it through the year. I mean, John, you were saying the other day that you've already seen that happen in your market, that some of the smaller, let's call them trunk slammers, are not going to make it. And so there's going to be an opportunity for the residential market to grow. And you got to be careful when you take over someone's accounts, but there's going to be some opportunity to get some new business there.
Yeah, and we've done so. We've taken over one account in the far west end of the state, and we're doing very well with it. And there's two others locally that just have walked away. They're just not opening up this year. So there's a lot of opportunity. And we're pulling back our marketing dollars and applying to buy these lists, because I think I can do better that way.
I was talking with a local friend in the business, and he was saying, granted, here in Massachusetts, May is typically obviously a pretty busy time of the year anyways, coming up toward Memorial Day and all, but he was saying that his residential service is just over the top, and in asking him why, he said that he was surprised at how many people at this point in time were calling because of other contractors that, like you guys both said, are just not working, not returning calls, are self-retiring, if you will, and are just kind of moving on at this point. So it's really an interesting period, and I agree. I think there's going to be some movement of accounts, and that could present some opportunity now.
That speaks to the importance of having a good, strong office staff too, and people that are looking to move because they can't get a hold of their contractor anymore are not going to call 12 different contractors. They're going to take the first one that answers their phone, and you're going to get that account because you answer a phone or you answer an email in a timely manner. That is going to be, I think that's very important, that you don't let that stuff sit. Don't let it go to a voicemail. There's plenty of people that work for $12, $13 an hour that are answering a phone that can schedule an appointment. There is an opportunity to make sure that's a marketing opportunity, in my opinion, is to make sure that you're answering your phone, answering your emails in a very timely manner. For just that reason.
Yeah. And kind of continuing that, we had a comment come in from a listener they primarily, or they audit, do auditing in HOAs, and think about where you're working, and so like if you're working for an HOA, well, then potentially there's some marketing within that neighborhood that you're probably already visiting weekly or routinely, that you make and grow your business right there, and you're not incurring additional travel costs because you're there already. The same thing with accounts you already have. If you're just kind of on maintenance plans, think about, taking a few minutes when you're on property and kind of running through the system and coming up with maybe a list of not just repairs, but maybe some upgrades, some easy things you can do, and take the time when you present it to show the benefit to your customer, whether it's going to a higher performance nozzle or, adding a sensor or something like that. Show them the long range savings, maybe in their water bill that they could see from that. There's a lot of easy things like that to help generate revenue as well on accounts you're already servicing.
Mike, I think there's also an opportunity to sell social distancing. No, really. Sell staying out of the garage. Sell staying out of the house. There's equipment out there that can automatically turn off a valve. There's equipment out there that can keep you out of a garage with the Wi-Fi controllers. Sell that. And then the productivity and the efficiency, especially for the northern climate guy that does have to do blowouts, if you never need to get into a basement again, or if you never need to get into a garage, you've just picked up 2 extra blowouts every day in the fall with the same crew, because you're using technology to improve your business.
Clearly, we've had a little bit of a windfall with potential upsells for connected controllers. I would say that most companies are finding at this point that is a product that's in very, very, very high demand. So that's a plus. But it's speaking to this. And if you look at past, although I have a tough time accepting, it seems like many times we keep going back to looking at 2008 and 2009 and pointing at that for some kind of history. And I struggle with looking at that and saying that this is what this looks like, because I don't think it looks the same. But there's certainly a fundamental reality that different parts of our businesses, I think we have the potential now for residential work to be up. Let's agree on that, because of people moving back. That potentially commercial is going to go down. So we're going to see all these different things going on. But fundamentally, this whole concept, where our industry is going at this point, where we're really much more focused on water management and doing more service for and upgrades and upsells anyways, I think it's a great time for the contractors to really take a look at this and embrace this concept of creating a pipeline of work. And like was said before, I think David said that you're not trying to hit home runs the whole time. We're just trying to be hitting singles consistently and always having some high value stuff to do every time. And I think people are really receptive to it. It's heck, I look at our own budget, and we had to cancel a vacation last month, and we get a couple extra $1,000 to do something with, and we're putting it into the house, like I'm sure a whole bunch of end users may do.
I've been told, and I don't know if this is the correct number or not, but I believe I've asked a number of manufacturers, and nobody's ever told me I'm wrong, is that there's over 43 million 1-inch irrigation systems in North America. And I started installing sprinkler systems in the summer of 1988. A year ago, last summer, I walked into one of the first houses I ever installed an irrigation system. A friend of mine bought the house. And I was selling a Rainbird RC controller at the time, electrical mechanical. It was still ticking in the garage 30 some years later. There's an upgrade right there. I mean, that controller is, I think it's within 5 minutes. You can set it to a 5-minute window. That's not the way irrigation is done anymore. There is a real opportunity to upsell your existing customers on new irrigation features.
Yeah, we've had actually a few comments come in kind of based on that. They have started taking advantage of this time to, people are home more, they're looking at their yards more. They've taken advantage of that. They've been able to upsell to smart controllers and using some of the Wi-Fi technology out there. And, it's been a positive for them. They've been able to take advantage of that. So there's lots of opportunities. I know there's a lot of people worried about things right now, but there's still a lot of opportunities because like you guys have said, if you drive by a home improvement store right now, just about any day of the week, it's packed. They're at home, they're looking around at things they can fix on, work up, they want it to look better. Why not jump in with irrigation just as, ride that wave, and even use this technology to be able to offer more services. I mean, you can offer more, you can get into water management and a lot of other things too, that they will be able to even charge more for your services.
I totally agree with you, Mike, on the water management. That's where the future of the industry is going. The irrigation repair contractor is going to be history in 10 years. It's going to be a water management contractor that does irrigation repair.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely don't just consider sort of an irrigation maintenance contract as just a repair. I mean, it gives you the opportunity to do a whole lot more.
Another opportunity that I think is going to start to develop that's kind of interesting too is that we're starting to see in our area, and I know it's happening everywhere, is that the new normal for restaurants are going to involve a lot more space and probably a lot more outdoor eating areas. And town next to ours here is even thinking about closing off sections of Main Street and turn them into dining areas and stuff, which actually is going to mean that there's most likely going to be more outdoor plants, pottery, that sort of thing, in order to create these outdoor environments. I think that's going to be coming soon, especially on that part as restaurants start to come up and open up again. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And as things are opening up, I've seen in a number of places, you start to see there's some executive orders where they're basically allowing restaurants to take over public spaces, so your sidewalks and like Chris was saying, even closing down some public streets, to be able to allow these restaurants to get back up and running and have customers come to them and be able to sit down and enjoy a meal. And with that, it's going to bring probably some landscape and irrigation possibilities as well. It's a good question that just came in. If you had to prioritize, what would be your 10 moves to reposition yourself in the upcoming economy that this crisis has perpetuated?
Can you repeat that question, please?
If you had to prioritize, what would be your 10 moves, or maybe it's not even 10, but what would be like the main moves you would take to reposition yourself in this upcoming economy that's coming out of this crisis?
Well, first of all, I'd make sure that I had cash. I'd get out of the accounts receivable business and start figuring out how to get paid up front, or as soon as I get the work done, get paid. I would embrace technology. Technology, your customers, I call it the Walmart effect. We are not the Walmart, the Amazon effect. We all like what Amazon does for us. We like the way we can track a package through Amazon. Your customers don't perceive you as a business any different than they perceive Amazon. If you're not giving them text messages, if you're not giving them email confirmations, if you're not doing those basic things that you love about what you learn from Amazon, I think you're missing the boat. Technology can help you do a lot of that stuff. And then I would embrace the Wi-Fi controller big time. because what you were saying, how it's changing. Well, you're going to become a water manager with a Wi-Fi controller, not an irrigation repair business. And this is an opportunity to do all that. And customers are open to it. Everybody's habits have changed, and everybody is open to new ideas and doing things differently right now. You will never have an easier time to change your processes than right now, from both your employees' point of view and your customers' point of view. It's just having the imagination to think about it and do it, and have the guts to do it. And then the last thing, I'd be very aggressive, because like Chris and John said, get out there and sell a bunch of singles. It's not a bad way to make a living.
Yeah, definitely. We have actually have a hand raised. It's Leonard Markowitz. I'm going to unmute you here. And Leonard, go ahead and ask your question or make your comment, please. Leonard, are you still with us? Okay.
I can add a few. There's no way I can do 10 of them. Plus, David would cover his would cover a bunch of mine anyways. But I think to add to that quantity of kind of initiatives and just things to be focused on at this point, I would take an overall more proactive approach to my business, and I think proactive meaning that I would be more actively involved in the management of it, be more actively involved in communication. I think communication is something that we're seeing it with a lot of companies that are being successful at this point. They are able to actively communicate what's going on and the opportunity to their customers. So they are reaching out more proactively and getting a message out to them, whether it's upselling or whether it's just trying to allay some of their concerns for having their staff, their technicians at their homes or in their businesses. I think that's really, really important. I think that I would say that we have to take a much more proactive approach to managing and communicating with our staff, with our teams at work, because there's a lot of concern there and a lot of fear for what's happening. And from a management point of view, I think that that's really, really critical, strategic now at this point to get out there and just be focused on regularly getting a message out. And then the other piece of that I'd add too is that, look, there's a lot of companies in our industries that have taken advantage of a lot of the the government support programs, the relief programs, whatever we want to call them, that are out there and available. But that in itself is almost a small chess game. The PPP program seems to be morphing as time goes on, and I know that a lot of companies in this industry have taken advantage of that, but it's something that we really need to keep the pulse of and be aware of what's going on out there, because it's a big part of how successful we're going to be, because it's either putting money in the economy or it's putting money directly in our company's coffers to be able to put it into the economy after. So those are three things I would add to it as well too.
I've got one more that I've just been thinking about. And I would like to say congratulations to everybody that's on this webinar, and to get involved with your state and national organizations. One of the things that Hindsight has done for the last 7, I think it's 8 years now, we've done an annual survey. We call it the benchmark report of where the green industry is. And there's a correlation to the contractors that are involved with a state association or a national association and how much their business grows. And the correlation is extremely positive for contractors that are involved with the IA or with their state association. That is, you find out you're involved, you get to know people, you get challenged by smart contractors with a beer in your hand, and you take something away from every one of those meetings. So stay involved and get more involved with your state associations would be something that I would add. And that's an intangible, but there's very much value with that, and I think others would agree with me on that.
Yeah, one thing that I'm really stressing is that my service techs and my installers and people out in the field being much more problem solvers and applying technology and processes to solving our customers' problems. And I think that that's really going to be key to keeping this engine going on our end. And like I made the remark before about the opportunities out there with these other companies just walking away. That's just the properties I've been on that I've inherited from these companies have been real money makers. And we're just applying and listening to the customer and applying technologies, Wi-Fi controllers, what have you, to their problems and solving them. And these customers are elated, absolutely elated. They just haven't had that kind of attention paid to them in the past. So I think that's a good example of taking advantage of the opportunities and problem solving.
Yeah, definitely. We have an attendee that has some comments for us too. So I'm going to open this up to Steve Pallas. Steve.
Good afternoon, everybody. I do like the form that you guys have on here. I just want to throw a couple more suggestions out there. I don't remember the gentleman's name who asked the question of 10 different items, but one thing that I would start with is build your team, your support team. If it's in the office or out in the field, make sure they're aware of all new technologies that are available out to the end customer. That's the first thing. Make sure your service techs can identify the issue and don't be afraid for them to make decisions in the field to ask to upgrade their nozzle or their smart controller or add a rain sensor. That would be the first thing. Get my team built. Get a good foundation. The people in the office manager can handle a lot of those questions for you. 2, make sure your technicians and your service crews are up to date with all the technology out there. Reach out to your professional distributors out there. They all have seminars. The IA has seminars. All manufacturers, it doesn't matter which one they are, they all have online training. We know in the summertime, everyone's busy. They're working 60, 70 hours a week. This is an opportunity that you can do online training yourselves and get your crews up to speed. Ask for help at your local distribution. They are listening to the manufacturers out there all across the country. That's a couple things. And then work with your existing customers. They're doing business with you for a reason. You're an irrigation professional. They're doing business with you. Just like I think the gentleman before me, his name was John. I did not catch his last name. He's inheriting these systems that have been poorly maintained for years. So we need to step back and look at your existing portfolio and how can we help our existing customers. Take care of your existing customers and then reach out and grow. Take care of your foundation because we don't want our existing customers to leave us and go to someone else. Those are just a few of them.
Very valid point,
Thank you, Steve.
That's great.
Some more, we have a bunch of comments coming in. One of them right now has to deal with water utilities. A lot of utilities have, either water budgets they implement or they offer rebates for installing certain equipment. How can utilities and contractors kind of work together to educate the customers, which is going to be beneficial for both of those parties on these water management resources?
Well, if your local water provider is providing a rebate to buy a smart controller, I would make sure, if that's the case, I'd market that to every one of my existing customers to make sure that I get that, I'm the installing contractor of choice for that water provider. I'd embrace that big time.
Yeah. Is there any, you guys have any ideas on how like contractors could work with those water utilities to, you know, maybe if some of those programs don't exist, but, you know, to get some of those out there, or you kind of work in partnership? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the one thing they want to be careful of with their water utility is that the water utility doesn't require a certain, doesn't require a certain controller to put in, because that can be detrimental to a contractor. Because there's a bunch of different Wi-Fi controllers out there, and you don't want your service techs to be trying to figure out every controller out there. You want your service techs to understand one or two major Wi-Fi controllers and not to become an expert on all 27 or 28 of them that are out there. So I would encourage you to work with the provider that the water provider understands what controller you want to sell, not which one that they want to get you to use. And I think that's something that I would team up with my local distributor and my local manufacturer to make that happen.
Well, even like you were saying, get involved with your local and state and even national associations. They all have hands in that too, and can help out and can help guide you and maybe even already leading those efforts to a certain extent. So kind of following back up on, you know, there's lots of resources at the associations that can be mutually beneficial. Sorry, I can't get my words out today. To both the association and you as a contractor, as a member, and helping guide some of those kind of programs.
Well, the key is to start the dialogue, and a lot of times, many times the contractors won't have that dialogue. It's not necessarily, it's usually rarely an adversarial kind of a relationship, and really to have that conversation with the water utilities. And yeah, I'll echo that again, that local associations are critical to it. It's critical for that discussion to be there to support. Many times they do have the tools or the people that are willing to have a higher level talk with the water utilities, and they're the resource that is that network that'll help when stuff like this is going on. Another thing we're starting to see, or locally that we saw in the local industry that was kind of cool, is that there was when this all started, it was amazing how many in the industry really started reaching out, and we had a really active discussion as to whether the industry should be open or closed. I was actually really shocked as to, or not shocked, but surprised at how many really felt strongly that we should stay closed as an industry. I just would have thought from an industry or a business point of view, it would have been the other side of it. But point being that there was a forum, there was a discussion, a lot more people got involved, and that was a really good thing. And then the other thing that I think is important with that network too is that we have to have, and this is probably one other, maybe we're getting closer to that 10th thing, we have to have plans in place too as to what we're going to do if someone gets sick. I hate to come back to the negative of all this, but I've seen contractors where they, and I'm sure even in the audience there might be a few that have had the experience now where someone on a crew or whatnot gets sick, and you got to have a plan in place as to what you're going to do and how to react to that. And many times it's important to have other businesses out there. It's important to have a connection to your local health department and the local requirements. And that's something that's also kind of key with this whole deal, is knowing what to do if.
Yeah, and we had a comment little while ago that falls right into that. It's you know, you have to have your plan in place for if you have an employee get sick, but also, you know, what's going to be or how receptive are the customers going to be, you know, to say higher prices, because a lot of places there are, you know, additional safety requirements that employers are going to have to put in place for their employees to protect them. You know, additional safety equipment and all that, that's going to be added operating costs. Are you guys getting any kind of a sense on what the market's going to bear on that? You know, if contractors need to start raising prices to cover some of these extra safety steps they have to take to protect their employees. You guys have any kind of thoughts on that, or?
One thing that's kind of interesting is that if you look at all of the supply channels, well, we can go to the simple one. Who would have thought that you know, the run on toilet paper happened the way it would have, and how that's impacted our life? I mean, I can't remember the last time I bought toilet paper on sale. I'd probably spent 3 or 4 times as much for a roll of toilet paper at this point. Who would have thought that? And I think if you look at our supply chain, and I don't see that there are necessarily going to be shortages. And you know, John, we talked about that a little bit the other day, but it very well could be that there is some disruption to our supply chain, and it could be that there's a certain, I don't know, you know, spraying off, I don't know, I'm just saying that out, throwing that out there, that there could be a product that just couldn't be made for some reason, or would be in short demand, and it could have some impact for the installer. That being said, it doesn't mean panic. It means that really we just need to be flexible with our discussions. Again, going back to communicating with our customers and setting the expectations there, that it's entirely possible that if you've got a quote out there, that pricing could change, or the availability of a certain fitting. And you know, it's crazy, but just something could get disrupted at this point, and we just don't know what it is. So the end user, the contractor, needs to be prepared to react and be able to deal with materials, to deal with the increased cost of doing business, or the different costs of doing business, and they need to be flexible in order to potentially increase pricing if need be.
Definitely. Turning gears here, we're kind of burning through our hour quickly, and it's going fast. Start thinking about the long term. What kind of like planning strategies, kind of thinking, you know, right now there's a lot of thought into, you know, tomorrow and next week, but kind of thinking on what can you do now that's going to prepare you for the long term.
I think the easy answer there is get more involved with the Wi-Fi controllers, because the Wi-Fi controllers, if you really can really help your business, not only in the short term, you get the sale today, but there are ways to monetize that over long term. You can get a maintenance fee, a monitoring fee with a Wi-Fi controller. That's a brand new revenue source for a contractor. You can keep the efficiency and the productivity of not having to go into a garage or a basement to run a controller with a Wi-Fi controller. So I would really strongly encourage contractors to think Wi-Fi and think Wi-Fi controller. What helps your business long term? Not just don't go for the one and done for the quick sale, but what Wi-Fi controller works for you for the long term, that you can get a monitoring system fee going to, that you can have an in-office service call and use the office staff to program controllers rather than sending out a skilled service technician to reprogram a controller. And do that from the office, charge for it. You've now opened up that productivity of that service tech to go do a high-end repair that can do a lot more value than go reprogram Mrs. Smith's controller, because you're doing that from the office. And that's long-term success. That's long-term productivity. That's long-term profitability. And your customers want it, and your customers expect it.
I would add or suggest, and I think you're right, David, is that we need to, for long-term success, a business needs to plan for this overused new normal term to be going on for a while, and to be prepared for it. Because like John was saying, I think there's going to be some casualties. And I think the reality of this is that we need to hunker down and plan for what the business climate is now. It's probably going to look different for the next couple of years. And it's time to get back to the nuts and bolts of business, know your numbers, and make sure that you're able to adjust, because this is what it's going to look like for a while.
I would add on that, Chris, you're 100% right. The days of just selling a job because you're there and that's gone for the next 4 or 5 years. You've got to become a business person and really understand your business from all angles.
Yeah, we
I
had
believe
Go ahead,
I'm sorry.
John.
I believe you need to be lean and flexible, and I think that should have been an inherited trait from the beginning.
Yeah. We also had a comment come in too about, so it follows this technology is using social media, make sure all that stuff, even down to your website, make sure that all that's up to date, and your social media, if you're going to have it, be active on there, don't just have it be stagnant, because people are going to see it a lot more if there's activity on those accounts. That's another tool that helps you get out there and doesn't take a lot of overhead resources to get into, but that could reap some benefits for you.
In our area, the restaurants that were on top of social media were the ones that really did well with the drive-through concept or the delivery concept. They had things already set up, and they just needed, it was there. And so it wasn't they weren't reinventing the wheel. They were just enhancing it.
Yeah.
I want to throw something else out there too that's kind of been interesting, is that I hadn't really thought about it, and I attended a webinar last week, I think, and I was listening to some folks talk there. And as much as with everything that's gone on, it seems like we've all gotten really, really used to these types of the webinars, the Zoom conversations, using our social media more regularly, just delivering messages with technology as we should. But there's one thing that's kind of interesting, is that if people aren't getting out all the time and having social interaction with other people and having other adults to talk to and stuff, there's also a significant level of appreciation for a contractor that, of course, is not knocking on doors necessarily, but picking up the phone and having a conversation with people. People need that now, and that need to talk and with other humans and stuff. Sometimes we have to consider that when it's so much more appropriate now to be communicating with technology, and not to say that we can't do it with Zoom or whatever, but just don't forget about this being this human need that's going on right now, and take the opportunity to have a real conversation with your customers. Listen to them, talk with them, be active in dialogue. People are responding to that. They need it now.
Yeah. I had an interesting question come in. We kind of hit on this a little bit with layoffs in other industries, but we've seen some within our industry too, mainly more in manufacturing distribution. This question is, how are other contractors handling the layoffs that many distributors have had? Many seasoned, educated irrigation professionals who provided a lot of knowledge at the distribution level are no longer there. You know, they were laid off. How can these contractors, find the resources they need, since these people they used to rely on aren't at their local distributor anymore?
Through their state association, their national association, and their manufacturers, and I think would be the next level. You know, the manufacturers all have good people out there too, and lean on their sales staff and the state associations.
And of course, I'm partial, but there's a lot of online resources and education and training that are available as well out there. That I
was
had to get
thinking
that in
the
at least
same
one point.
thing, It's like, how self-promoting do I want to be right here? The IA offers a lot of education. That's another resource, and that's another tool for contractors during these times too. Is like Chris said, there's a lot of online content now, not just with our two companies, but manufacturers and a lot of other sources. There's a lot of content out there now you can find and go online and educate yourself, and so you don't have to rely on someone else as much. Any other thoughts on that, or since we only have a few minutes left, and this is kind of a current issue, I'm going to change gears here a little bit. I want to spend just a couple of minutes talking about managing or taking advantage of any government programs or regulations. Like currently we've just seen the PPP program. I think Chris mentioned earlier, the payroll protection programs. What are your guys' thoughts on these programs? What should contractors be looking for, and how can we work with these programs? Because those can be a great benefit to kind of bridge these gaps right now.
I think if there's a program out there that you qualify for, you should definitely look for it. Look at it and it's an opportunity to help you. And the PPP program's been I think it's a very good opportunity for a contractor if they qualify for it. I think we talked earlier about the water providers. If the local water provider is going to provide a rebate to customers that buy a Wi-Fi controller, I would understand that program extremely well. And I would work with that provider to sell the products that you want them to buy all day long. I mean, what an easier sell of a Wi-Fi controller if someone's going to pay half the price of it. And they're not going to ask you what margin you're making on it. You're going to get your margin on it. You're going to get it. Just, to me, that's a win-win-win. So if there are programs out there that promote water efficiency and water as a resource, I'd embrace those. And from a business end, I'd embrace them too. Because if you don't, your competitors will. And in the end of the game, you got to stay ahead of your competitors.
I think the availability of these programs have shown a few things, and I agree with David that heck, I know from our own organization when this started, I made the assumption that, well, we'll probably be fine, and I'm sure the business is going to be off a little bit, but we're not going to qualify for these types of programs. And in talking with some business associates and learning a little bit more about it and the criteria, I realized pretty quickly that we weren't going to have to actually provide a tremendous amount of expected losses up front, and that the rules for the program were actually quite simple. And we decided to dedicate some resources to the applications, and we did. It was turned out to be I think a wise decision, and we quickly, I think within 10 days, we had a chunk of money that arrived in the account, and we were following the rules. We found a few things that I think are important to businesses to look at now, and one is that the relationship with a bank, having a credit relationship and being able to contact someone at the bank that has a name is more critical than ever, and it shows now with the availability of these programs. I mean, heck, our local bank has an advocate there. I mean, this is arguably in their interest as well too, and that person contacts us, just like I think our local bank put out about 600 of the PPP loans or grants, and they've gotten to be quite good at it. So make sure that during this time, you think about trying to cement that relationship with a bank that, sure, everyone stresses that all along and everything else, but that's critical to this whole thing, to be able to get at these programs quickly, because the people that were able to, they had the relationship, they were able to get their numbers together, get the information in there. And unfortunately, probably some of the companies that really needed the money the most didn't, not because they didn't qualify for deserving it, they just didn't have the means to have that relationship and the paperwork and everything ready to go. And that's really where the focus needs to be. And certainly I'll put in my continued plug for local banks. It's really helped us out a lot. I know a lot in the industry tend to have found that the local banks, the smaller banks, the regional banks have been a real asset in this.
Yeah, and getting back to that is kind of where we started this conversation, to take advantage of a lot of these programs. You know, we started off by talking about some vital business statistics. That's good information to have in hand, or at least have in mind as you're looking at the programs that are out there, especially if it's some kind of governmental program, and seeing, you know, you can look at the terms of these programs and see if it is actually a good fit for your business or not. You know, it's one of those things to pay attention to. You know, the cost of the program in the long run might not be worth the short-term benefit. And knowing your business and those statistics about your company will help you evaluate those better. All right. Well, we're running out of time, so I think I'm going to wrap it up right here. I want to thank everybody for attending. We had a great turnout. Definitely want to thank David, Chris, and John for their participation and their insight and knowledge, and sharing that with us today. And just want to let everybody know, I know we didn't get to all the questions. They really started flowing in there pretty fast and furious for a while. If you have further questions, you'll see on the screen, you can email education@irrigation.org, and we'll be glad to coordinate with these guys to get questions answered. And just be on the lookout for more webinars. We plan to do some more of these type discussions in the future. So go to the IA website and look for upcoming webinars. Thank you, everyone, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.